I've got a bunch of these polycarbonate plates laying around, so they will be my mat for my whetstones. That's perfect. Okay, so today we've got a repair of this really pretty Shun Hiro. And this is a 6-inch chef knife, and it's one of the knives I've got from my friends over at Cutlery and More. And yeah, so this is a restoration that I have been meaning to do because this is a great knife, and the SG2 core steel, very good steel. It's just a shame that people abuse their knives this way. This was one of the knives from the unboxing of last week. In terms of the items that I'm using, I've got the Atoma 140, which is my fastest cutting diamond stone. Then I've got this is the Shihiro Debato, but it's a 3000 grit stone on one side. This is the 150 grit stone. I'll use it right after the diamond stone because it's probably not as aggressive as the diamond stone. It also is prepping the knife to go onto the 1000 and 6000 side. In terms of accessories, all I have is the Whetstone holder by Naniwa and then the bridge by Naniwa as well. And this is just a bin that you can pick up anywhere you want. I got these from Amazon, but I'll post a link to all the items in the video description. Yeah, so this knife here needs a lot of work, even though it's not a chip on the blade, a crack is just as good as a chip. It's got about, looks like a 3mm deep crack on this blade, and so it will take a significant amount of time to actually grind down the blade. And the crucial thing with this repair is to maintain the profile that we originally have. So I'm just gonna hop right into it. And the reason why I'm using this bin today versus a sharpening pond, because the sharpening pond, it doesn't really hold a lot of water. And so because I'm grinding away a lot of material, I will need a significant amount of water to, rinse off the stones as I'm sharpening, and also to rinse the knife and kind of give me a better edge or a better visual of the edge as I'm working. Now, normally when I'm sharpening a knife, the sharpening angle is roughly anywhere between 12 and 15 degrees, if you guys want an approximate angle. For this repair though, because I am trying to grind away a lot of material, during the sharpening you guys will see that my spine will lift significantly further away from the stone. And so that's just basically me trying to grind down the knife faster than usual. Okay, so as you guys notice, if you guys are looking real carefully, I'm actually at certain areas or certain times, I'll lean the knife really low, like more like 10 degrees on the cutting angle. Now what I'm doing there is I'm actually thinning the very cutting edge of the blade. That makes it actually easier when I raise the spine up to take off more material. So I alternate between going high spine and low spine so that I'm thinning the cutting edge at the same time I'm taking off more materials when I'm actually raising the blade. Then when you guys see me doing these really short strokes around the top corners or the bottom corners of the stone, all I'm doing there is I'm actually working the knife's tip profile. Typically when I do work on the tip, I put the tip in areas that I normally miss on the whetstone or on the plate right now. And that's just a way for me to wear this stone down as evenly as possible. You certainly don't have to do that, but it's something that I've developed, just kind of a little habit that I do. And so it helps my stone maintain a flatter profile. Okay, so what I'm checking for now is just more or less uniformity from the heel of the knife to the cutting tip. And I don't want to see any major lumps on the cutting edge. If you do that, you're spending too much time in one area. And right now the cutting edge profile looks really nice. So far I'm doing an okay job. So again, grinding some at the straight, doing the push and pull at the bottom half of the knife, and then doing a slightly more curved pull at the upper half to help keep that nice, relatively rounded profile. So now I'm going to flip the knife around and work on the other side, because I've grounded away probably a millimeter or so of material at the cutting edge. When you guys flip the knife for the first time, you'll see a lot of material come off of the knife onto the stone, and that's normal. You basically are pulling off a ton of the burr that has been developed on the other side. And also, you guys notice that when I'm at the tip, either the top tip or the bottom tip, I'll stand here and grind for a little while, and that's again to help me ensure that I wear the upper and lower areas of the stone that are normally neglected in this process. So that's all I'm doing. Okay, so right now I did a good couple of minutes of just push and pulls, and now I'm going more of a crescent style where I go from tip to heel. What that's doing is that kind of evens out all of the small grooves and valleys that's created on the cutting edge from push and pulls. So even though push and pulls, it removes a lot more material, it tends to sometimes in certain spots of the knife will remove more materials than desired, especially if you don't have an even hand. So a really good habit is going from the heel to tip in one stroke and back and forth. All right, so at this point, I've got about about a half a millimeter of crack still on the cutting edge. And so, yeah, just keep on grinding. And some of you guys may be wondering why I don't grind away at the crack at this point. Well, two things. One, you don't want to create a concave profile on your cutting edge. And then the second thing is, I want to keep the profile relatively close to the original profile because of the Hamon line and the Damascus cladding on this knife. If I alter it too much, it'll look kind of funny. So that's why I'm doing my best to maintain the original profile. And you don't want that gap between the Hamon line and the cutting edge to be too differentiated between the belly and the rest of the knife. Okay, so now I'm really just taking my time, going nice, long, broad strokes to really even out that cutting edge, and before I move on to the whetstone. Finishing off on the Atoma, I'm going to go a few broad strokes from tip to heel, back and forth a few times, go back and forth between the two sides, and just really clean up that cutting edge before we move on to the whetstones. And this step is not necessary, but it does help that you do as much of the work on the diamond plate before you move on to the whetstones. The more the diamond plate does, the less the whetstones have to work. Alright, so this is the 150 side of the Dabato. And it will absorb a significant amount of water. Now most 150 grit whetstones, they do absorb a lot of water, and so this is nothing unusual. In fact, I'm gonna let it soak for just a minute or so. That was less than a minute, that was like 20-30 seconds, and the stone has enough water now. loud. So people ask me, when do I know to apply water on a stone? When it sounds like that. Well, again, I'm doing the same thing that I did on the Atoma plate, just cleaning the edge up before we move on to the 1000 grit stone. Right. Now we're moving on to the 1000 grit stone. This is my neat rusty eraser. This is like the best $10 investment you can make on your sharpening kit. This rusty eraser I've used now for, I've probably owned this very rusty eraser for about 3 years or so. And they last forever, and they do such an amazing job cleaning your whetstones. And you cannot find an easier tool to use to clean your whetstones. All right, so now we sharpen. Okay, the stone's performing very nicely. And if you guys are noticing that when I go to the heel, instead of stopping and going back to the tip and going through another pass, I'm going from heel to tip to heel to tip, all in one motion. All it is I'm more comfortable with the stone and just sharpening in general, and I'm fairly confident in my own ability to hold a very consistent angle, going from hip, tip to heel to hip to heel, tip to heel, tip to heel to tip to heel. Now all I'm doing now is going back and forth between the two sides and basically counting equal amount of strokes. So I may have started with 10 strokes and then 10 strokes on each side, and then down to 6, then down to 4, down to 2. When I get down to 2, I typically stay for 3 or 4 turns or transitions before I go to 1 stroke on each side. And that's just to really make sure that I remove as much of the micro burrs as I can. And then hopefully by one side, all of the micro burrs are gone, or there's just the absolute minimal amount of micro burr left. And it should leave you with a fairly clean edge. Okay. All right, so now we move on to the 6,000 grit stone, or the 6,000 grit side. And all I'm gonna do is single strokes, okay? That's all I'm gonna do. And all I'm doing is removing all of the micro materials from the cutting edge. And you certainly can do the push and pull at this point if you really wanted to, but I don't really feel the need to do that at this point. right. Okay. Not too bad. It can push cut okay. Okay, so we're gonna clean it up just a little bit more with a strop. Okay, so this is nothing special, just one of my lateral straps that I've made, and it's naked. There's nothing on this thing. All I'm using it for is just to remove just some micro materials off the cutting edge. Okay. Yeah. So not too bad at all. All right, and the edge has been restored to its former glory. So just a quick recap. All I did was grind the stone down on the Otoma 140, pulled off like 99% of the chip or the crack that was still on the blade, and then hopped onto a 150 grit whetstone. This is the Bato 150. You can hop on any coarse whetstone. I just had a 150 laying around. You can hop to 240 or a 320, whatever it is. So going from a really rough stone or a really rough diamond plate, you don't want to go from the diamond plate to a whetstone too quickly, or to like a 1000 grit, because the 1000 grit will have to work really hard to pull off all of those micro abrasions or abrasions on or left by the Otoma 140. This is a 1000 common stone that it's a secret thing that I'm working on. So I can't tell you much about it. It's made by Shun Hiro, that's all I can say. It's a splash and go 1000, 6000. And yeah, so it's a little project I'm working on. You guys will hear more about it in a future video. And then from the 6000 grit side, all I did was strop on a plain leather strop for, I don't know, was that 10 strokes on each side. And the edge, as you can see, is fairly clean. And obviously I can spend more time on the 6000 grit whetstone and do more push and pulls if I really wanted to polish the edge. But at this point, going from an edge that was pretty much unusable and a knife that was really bound for the trash to a knife that can be used in any kitchen is something that I'm really happy about, and I'm super excited for this knife. So this is going to one of my Patreon supporters, Kobe. Kobe, thank you so much for being a Patreon supporter, and I hope you enjoy this beautiful Shun Hiro SG2. And yeah, so hopefully next week I'll have another restore coming. I don't know exactly what I'm restoring yet, but I'll have another restore coming soon. And this may sound silly, but do you know what I consider a really successful sharpening? When I've left no scratches anywhere on the knife's profile. And I achieved that today. Not to brag or anything, but You know, I was able to keep a very steady hand, and there are no scratches or no secondary scratches outside of the first millimeter of the cutting edge. That's something that I can walk away from very proudly. If you can walk into a sharpening session and be very confident and not have shaky hands, and then walk away with a knife that is fairly sharp and there are no additional damages to the knife, and you've completely taken care of the original damage that was there, that's something you should be proud of. And you know, don't let anyone tell you that you need to be a master to be able to repair a knife. I mean, I did this repair in about 35 minutes or so. And it did take a lot of work. It took a few different stones, but it really, all you needed was a stone to repair the knife, which is what I use on the Otoma 140, and a stone to sharpen the knife on. Nothing really fancy or high tech. If you didn't have this bridge set up, simply go onto a brick with a towel between the brick and the whetstone, and that's all you needed. All right, guys, and if you guys have any questions regarding restorations or any of the gear that I've used, again, I'll link everything that is used in this video in the video description. And if you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments. I will be glad to answer some of the questions you may have. Now, a lot of folks have been asking about Q&As and live Q&As in general, and I've been kind of processing that. I can probably do a live Q&A about knives on like a Saturday. If you guys want to do kind of AMA style, where you ask me more about my life, about YouTube, that is not necessarily knife specific, I will post a video like that, or I will do a live Q&A of those type of questions on my Ricky Tran channel. So knife questions will be answered here on Perfection, and non-knife questions will be answered on Ricky Tran. All right, so thank you guys for being here, and I'll catch you in the next video.